All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for this Wednesday, December 8th, 2021, 9:10 a.m. Thanks for hanging in with us for our slightly delayed start. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Commissioner and Vice Chair Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. To Commissioner Edwards' left is the County Manager, Amira Chavez, and to Commissioner Mejia's right is Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We have our budget team present through our Zoom. This is a hybrid meeting, and the public can follow along either in the boardroom or through the Thurston County YouTube channel, where this meeting is being live streamed. We're slated for an hour and a half. This is the topic today is final budget deliberations as we prepare after a series of hearings the last 2 days and preliminary deliberations last month. We're going to go through a series of miscellaneous topics, trying to tie up loose ends and hopefully put a bow on this biennial budget. And if we can't finish that today, we have a session tomorrow to definitely accomplish that.
Yeah, and also if I may add to that is with the schedule of Friday, December 17th, for the board to take actions and prevent the budget. And that is the schedule for you. So long days, last 2 days. Commissioners, thank you for your patience in going through the public hearings. So Robin is going to walk you through a series of steps, and hopefully through that conversation we would like to ask for direction, and that will give us the tools and direction to finalize the documents for the final approval for the budget.
All right. So good morning, Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager, and as has been stated, we're just going to walk through the final few things to wrap up the budget, and we'll then, the last thing we'll do is walk you through the list of resolutions so you're aware of everything that you'll be voting on the 17th. So my first question for the board this morning is based on all of the comments that you've received over the last 2 days, setting aside the requests for reconsideration for just a moment from the offices and departments. But based on everything you heard from citizens, are there any changes that you would want to make to the budget as it stands? Well,
go ahead.
We'll take up the error issue soon. We'll take up the list that I sent out to you, but just first off, did you hear anything that would make you want to change?
Yeah, well, I did.
Good.
We don't get much public participation in these things, but Mr. Pettit did bring up the fact that there was more money than normal available. And so consequently, I'm wondering why we're tighter than normal, I guess. So I know a lot of that is earmarked money that's come in that we don't readily have access to. If you took that out even, it looks like we've got an ending fund balance and an ability to have pretty good revenue, providing the economy stays the way it's been. To include, I think, wasn't there about 2 million more than you had anticipated? Maybe somebody down in the auditor's office had come up with.
Darren is estimating that this year's ending fund balance is going to be about $1 million higher than what I've been.
And so I guess we're going to be debating earlier or later about road diversion or levy shift, that type of thing.
We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
And I'm almost wondering why we need to worry about that if our budget is as in good a shape as it looks to be. Now, that's
I can respond to that. I mean,
okay.
So I took a different lesson from what I heard. I mean, seeing all the things that we funded together in one place during the last 2 days, I was just blown away. If you look at pages of Robin's packet, 41, 42,
This is the one from
43,
yesterday, right?
44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, and then it starts with capital, but just not even talking about capital, that is 11 pages worth of pretty small print, just line items of stuff that we funded. I've never seen anything. I mean, I've been tracking county budget for about 5 or 6 years before I ran for office. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, the answer is we funded an astronomical amount of policy and expansions of programming, which is great. I'm glad we were able to do it, but to me, that's the answer to your question of why we're kind of tight at the end, because we wrang as much resource out of what we had to try to meet a pent-up set of needs. You know, for all the reasons that Mr. Pettit and others were talking about, we're always lagging behind, not being able to even keep up with our COLAs in terms of tax growth, and we have this unusual situation where, yeah, now we were able to do a lot of stuff, and we did it. That's how I look at where we're at, and why we're kind of now, we wanted to do more because it's always great to look at everybody's, wanting to meet everybody's needs, but I mean, I would just encourage you to take a look at, this is from one of the two packets.
Monday evening, yeah.
Monday evening packet, just look at pages 41 through 51, and just look at everything we funded. It's unbelievable, to me.
It is. We are doing pretty good, but my concern is, and this was brought out by the sheriff, that we're still number 39 in a county with 39 counties in officers per 1,000 population served. And I don't understand how we can be number 6 in population, I think it is, in the counties throughout Washington. We're in the capital county, and we've got the lowest ratio of officers per 1,000, and we've not been able to overcome that, even though, you know, I mean, the budget's got 500 million in it. I realize that a couple 200 million of that kind of is dedicated, but still recognizing everything that you just laid out. I'm not dismissing that. That's all good stuff, but I just can't figure out our priorities, I guess, as to why we're still 39 out of 39 counties. And that's been an ongoing problem here. But I would think with this healthy of a budget, we'd been able to do better than that. So that's one of my main concerns is adequate law enforcement funding as we're coming up on challenges with new laws and other things that are gonna make things difficult for us. So that's one of my big issues.
One of the things we did, and I don't think the sheriff's office talked about it, was we added the 4 embedded, what do you call them, social workers or behavioral health navigators that will hopefully help them deal with the new realities of these legislative changes. And I'm hopeful. I mean, I don't know.
I'm hopeful as well.
He's the expert on that, you know, and the sheriff will tell us how that works and whether that really helps him, you know, but I'm hoping that that really helps deal with these new changes and ultimately, even though it may not be deputies per 1,000, it's staffing per, you know, 100,000 people, and it'll increase capacity for their office.
Well, I guess that's yet to come.
Yeah, Commissioner Mejia, you have quick comments? We'll just keep
Yeah.
going. Sure.
So I guess to Commissioner Edwards' points, I mean, first of all, we're not 39 out of 39. I will debate that. I know Yakima is 39 out of 39 because I had a discussion with their commissioner about this. So I know we're not the last one. I was under the impression we were 37 out of 39, just from conversations that I've had previously with law enforcement. You know, and I guess we just have to look, you know, when we present, you know, we're those numbers of we're 39 out of 39 or 37 or 38 out of 39. I mean, compared to population, we also have to look at the size, right? And there are other counties that, Pandarel, for example, is a very tiny county, and, I was talking to them, and they have, one sheriff on their night shift for their whole county. So, but, they have such a tiny population, their numbers show up really high up. So for me, that's important, do we have enough officers for the county that we're covering instead of population? I thought we were able to do very well this year. I was honestly ready for kind of more of a letdown, but we got so much through, and I think we see those high numbers up this year and next year, and it's just because of that one-time funding. And I feel like just we're eating into that remaining, the rest of the years. It's obviously seen right there. It's great for 1 year and 2 years maybe, but throughout the years, we're definitely going to be taking a little bit more of a hit. Because we're not going to see that influx of one-time funding coming in.
County manager.
Related to the ending fund balance. And good news, really. I think we're in a good position, but as Commissioner Mejia said, it's a one-time, it's a 1 year. I don't think it will be prudent for the board to look at alternatives as to how you can spend a one-time windfall on a long-term strategy. But through the conversation, the board has talked about what is coming next year. We have contracts with the unions. They might be put in the position for the board to consider cost of living increases. And if this is a windfall, additional ending fund balance, perhaps the board may consider to be prudent to have that somewhat of an option for you to consider this next year cost of living increases that perhaps might be coming your way. I strongly encourage the board not to urge or put yourselves in the position just because you have what is 38.1 million and 37. We don't know what the ending fund balance of this year will be. To run to the bank in a way, my words. And because of one time, windfall doesn't really fund long-term strategies, because then we will see the impact on the long-term and ongoing expenditures. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm just expressing
Yeah, no,
my position. I've been pretty clear on that.
I understand what you're saying, sir. I mean, like one of the things the public should understand is that we used to, as a county, just try to get above the black line there at the bottom, and I never thought that was a good practice, and so we've adopted a resolution that targets the blue line, and I wasn't sure, and when we adopted that resolution a year and a half or 2 years ago, whatever it was like we were going to give ourselves some ramp up time, and I was still nervous, like, can we actually get there?
Right.
So one of the things we're doing with this quote unquote windfall is we're fundamentally reforming our financial practices, and we were able to do what this graph is showing, and I'm not even all that excited about being below that even as a projection, because as we talked about yesterday, things can go positive. Your assumptions may be too conservative, or things can go negative. Inflation and new construction falls. I mean, in this economy, sitting where I'm sitting right now, I could flip a coin and to try to figure out which direction things will go in the next 1, 2, 3 years. And so, to me, you have to just use your best projection capability to try to target your goals, and then you adapt. When things go a little bit better or a little bit worse, you just then adapt. It's like steering a big, ship through a narrow channel, and it's all you can do. But I don't like targeting things that are below and then just hoping for the best. That was the whole debate we had when COVID, hit. It turned out not to be great. Commissioner Edwards was right. He was saying, I don't think it's going to be as bad as Commissioner Mentor and Hutchings said. He was right, and I was very, very grateful that was true. But I felt like we didn't know at the time. We had all the information we had was that unemployment spike that we saw yesterday in the graph that you showed us. That was scary. Nothing had ever, it was unprecedented. So how could anyone really predict what would result from that when we've never seen an unemployment spike like that? So, you know, you take sort of a moderately conservative approach and then you just be grateful when things come out ahead. That's the way I look at it. I don't like to ride the line. So that's kind of, so I'm circling back to your original question, which is, you know, where is this money going that we have all this money? Well, part of it is trying to reform the way we kind of did business as a matter of course for commissions way back into the past. We never had a rainy day fund. I don't think that was responsible. We were often riding the minimum cash flow line. No, I'm not gonna vote for a budget that's riding the minimum cash flow line for the county. So that's another place that some of this like excess capacity went.
I guess since we're talking about concerns and stuff, John, let me ask Robin, because I've been opposed to the atrium all along, you know, but I want to do something here. But the democratic process wins out in the end. I'd expressed my concerns about voting for atrium funding. Were you able to divide that out? We talked about that maybe we're gonna vote on several resolutions during the course of this budget.
Yes, for the capital facilities?
Yeah.
Yes, we will prepare a separate vote for the atrium.
Okay, well,
Before you get into, yes, absolutely, I'm tracking that, Commissioner.
anyway, good enough. You know, we all have our different concerns on where it ought to go. And that's what makes this country great. We get to talk about it, see where we end up. So I respect my seatmates' positions on that as well.
Just want to highlight one, if I may, Commissioners. Yesterday's presentation that Robin provided, there is on page 22. Okay. And there's a summary of the policy level request the board has funded. And this is out of only the general fund.
Is that this little chart?
Yeah. In 2022 proposed is 5.7 million.
I think that was the one with everything over 100
Yeah.
instead of a million, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
2023, over $4 million. This is unprecedented, as Commissioner Messer stated. At least in my tenure here at Thurston County, policy level requests have hovered about 2 million.
1 to 2 million.
1.5, 2 million. So you have done a lot, and you have done a lot in maintaining fiscal responsibility. So kudos to you on all the decision-making process. I think it's worth highlighting.
And I mean, it's worth highlighting that 2.5 million goes to the sheriff's office. Out of 5.7, out of all the, you know, I mean, it's not all coming straight out. I mean, yeah, that's the reality. So I mean, I feel like the board's very mindful of the challenges that the sheriff has faced, and we've incrementally tried to do our best to support those challenges. 'Cause they're real, I understand. They've gone through a lot. They've historically had underfunding, and then there've been new challenges in the time we've been on the board that made it even harder in certain respects. So, but I would just, when I'm looking at what we did, the big things we did, you know, that's a good point, Ramiro. So, okay, it sounds like it sounds like we're not really needing to, I mean, we actually have things to deal with that
Okay,
and I would say that public comment I got might very well reflect the way I will want to approach these new straggly items that we have to manage. I didn't come out of the last 2 days thinking, oh my gosh, we really
gotta
missed the
change
mark.
this, all right,
We've got to not do that because we're just way off base. That was your question, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next item.
Are you ready
Any further
to
comment?
move to and do you have, I did not print
You have-
copies to bring
I'm sure I do.
If not, I can make another copy.
If we're gonna spend some time going over it, maybe you could.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right, so the first item on the list, which you've had a preview of, is the overstated revenue by the auditor's office. That's the one big error that we found in the whole budget that wasn't accounted for.
Is there a way to explain that to the public so that they would understand what we're actually
Well,
talking about?
When we enter, so we make all the budget changes in Questica, our budget system, right? And for any item that you're entering, you enter the incremental change over the prior year. So the item that they were entering the change for was internal services. And instead of entering the change amount as a decrease over last year, a decrease from last year, they entered it as an increase to last year. So they just, I mean,
Instead of subtraction.
they did it backwards.
Out of how many line items? Did they make?
Oh gosh, thousands,
Well, yeah, that's what I'm
thousands
saying.
and thousands of line items in a budget, and I've said that before, we're human, we're gonna find mistakes, this happened to be a fairly big one. This is the only big error that we've found in this budget, we're actually
And then
doing pretty
maybe
good.
maybe an explanation how that carries on to the following, the next year.
So the impact is that it's almost $1 million that is less revenue than you were anticipating. $1 million less, or 906,000 to be a little more precise, less revenue, not only in 2022 because it wasn't a one-time thing, but in every year thereafter.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. So it's not compounding, but it is $1 million less in every year. It carries into the future. So the one-time difference in, maybe we'd find a little more revenue somewhere else, maybe spend a little less in a single year, that's not gonna get you there. It's an ongoing challenge that you need to find an ongoing fix for. So 906,000 less in revenue. And the two items that I had proposed to you to get you almost to a full fix, if you will, is to shift an additional 400,000 in corrections spending out of the general fund to detention sales tax. And the detention sales tax fund has capacity. I've talked to Heidi in the sheriff's office. She said that they can do that if that's your decision. So that gets you about half the way there. The other thing that I had suggested is to reduce the reduction of the road transfer. So right now, the levy shift from the road fund to the general fund this year was $2,750,000. This forecast assumed that you would reduce that amount by 500,000, so the new amount would be 2,250,000, and I am suggesting you could cut that in half. And because that's compounding and you'd only do half that much in future years, that gets you much closer to the million without having to reduce $1 million or find $1 million in savings, if you will. So we can bring up the chart again. I can enter those numbers and you can see how that impacts. And this is not gonna be quite as elegant as during the, your budget deliberations because I don't have multiple screens available to me, but we'll see what that looks like. All right, so this is the graph, the way it looks. As of October 28th, it reflects what's in the budget. It also assumes a 3% reversion, which is normal, and it assumes 1.5 million in each year of lost revenue coming into the general fund. So if we now take out the 906,000 in revenue and carry that forward, now the graph looks like this, which is definitely not acceptable.
I have a question.
Yep.
With the 906, it only shows for 2 years. I'm just,
Right, so the chart is set, it picks up this number and incorporates it into the ongoing
Okay.
other revenue.
okay, thank
That's
you.
why you don't see it in every year.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so then if we move 400,000 of the expenditures to detention sales tax, that starts to recover a little. And if you were to reduce this 500,000 to 250,000, then you get back to about where we were before we found out about the revenue loss.
Hey, Robin, can you go back to the chart for a second? Could we assume a 38.1 million ending fund balance and see what it does?
Yeah.
I don't know how you can do that on your chart.
So I'm also going on how to get there because what I don't know is if Darren assumed more revenue, less
Right.
expenditures, I don't know how he got to his number. Let's just say,
Let's just add a revenue,
yeah, that's what I'm
just
gonna
one time, because that's
do.
just one time.
1 million.
Yeah.
Is a one-time thing that gets us.
Yeah, and that for talking purposes, that would be fine probably.
Yeah.
So the point is the graph really doesn't change because it's a one time.
How does that carry through to additional years though, that it makes it all work?
It just
Closer.
assumes there's $1 million more in the fund balance in every year. It doesn't compound, it doesn't add to the growth of any particular revenue
I want to
source.
make sure that, the additional million really doesn't have a compounded effect, it's the same.
Can you do one thing for my benefit?
Yeah.
Remove the million,
Yep,
go back to where we were.
and,
Remove the $245,000 GASCOM expense, just so I can see what that looks like.
Gets you a little bit closer to the line,
gets you to the target line.
to the target like sooner.
I guess on that particular topic, I think, although I'm not completely sold, I'm looking at that as a experiment, if you will, to see if it's gonna be as successful as we hope. But in the process, that's gonna alleviate certain workload off of the sheriff. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword for me to see if we can't make sure that's gonna work as proposed, and then if it doesn't, then we can talk about it in the next cycle.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm trying to kind of stretch the margins of things. But I was wondering, in an effort of doing a trial run, could we possibly do this with ARPA funds due to the case, due to the case that more people are home, there are complaints for barking dogs, and just things in the county have skyrocketed just because of COVID, because everyone has to work from home. People are home more often. Before, they probably didn't notice the neighbor's barking dog, but now they do, because they're there.
Well, we could tie that in.
Come on, Robin.
We might be able to tie that in.
No way,
Commissioner.
I'm gonna get that past the monitor.
Maybe what I'm hearing from Commissioner Edwards, and I don't know if you can do this, is if the board considers a trial run funded the biennial of increases and nothing else beyond that. So that will give the board the opportunity to see how effective that investment in 2 years will be.
I think,
I don't really, so I kind of think that that's inappropriate. I mean, with JazzCom, number one, we know what it is because we used to do it. Number two, we have to renegotiate not renegotiate, but amend the ILA and everything. So this is one of the reasons I'm kind of targeting this item. There's two reasons. One is that I don't want to yo-yo this. Like, once we commit to this, I want that we're committed to this. And I don't want to go, oh, 2 years, oh, we can't afford it. Now we got to like undo the ILA and go back. And like, JazzCom's going to be hiring field enforcement officers based on this funding and all of that. Like, we have to commit to this, in my opinion, for the long term. The other reason I'm targeting this is I went through and pulled the last $1 million+ worth of decisions that we made based on the videos that we think. And if you look at what's here, these are all the holds that we had where we weren't in agreement. Just to remind my seatmates of what's on the chopping block, if something needs to be on the chopping block. Ag Liaison, JazzCom, CPED, the professional services, $75,000 to improve, help docket items go through. The district court interpreter coordinator, sheriff's overtime, CPED admin staff, public prosecutors, public records staff member, and the LMD thing, which is little. But those are the last things that we kind of struggled over, and every other decision, I guess Ag Liaison maybe not, but all the other ones like really affect the business, was a priority of one of our departments, and I'd have trouble just picking one of them. You know, I felt like we really had a balanced approach in terms of trying to meet everybody's priorities, and to just pick one and go, well, sorry, prosecutor, you don't get your public records. You know, we have reconsideration requests too that we're not even looking at factoring in. So anyway, to me, the JazzCom one is not affecting anyone's book of business. It's not affecting a priority. It was a commissioner priority. And I brought it to the board 2 years ago, and Commissioner Mejia has brought it forward again. And I've been looking for a way to support it, and I still will. I mean, if we don't do this, I'll be trying to do it 2 years from now if we've got the capacity. But that's just for me, my thought process of why that might be the number one thing to step back from. But that's just my opinion, Commissioner. Are you good with? I mean, I guess I've never heard anyone to complain about the 400,000 more of detention sales tax and the road. I think we have to talk about that because
That's probably what I would like to.
let's start with that and then see if we can do anything.
Thank you. Let's start with that. You know, the gap in revenues of 900,000+. Staff has provided you with two options. One is shifting activities from corrections to the detention sales tax and reducing the road levy share from 500,000 to 250,000. What the board's pleasure is on that proposal?
I guess I'll throw a real wrench in it from my perspective. How much money are we spending out of general fund that goes to the atrium over the next 7 years?
I think we had a 1.2.
1 not quite 1.2 million per year out of the general fund.
Okay, well, that covers it.
Except then we turn around and have to meet a whole bunch of space needs that we don't, I mean,
We still got building space empty over here, a lot of empty office space right now up here.
Well, there's a proposal by Commissioner Edwards to eliminate the lease of the, on the atrium. What is your pleasure on that?
For me, it's like, where do we go from here, though? I just don't see a step forward, like, are we gonna start talking about, you know, building a new courthouse, and if so, what's the timeline for that? I don't see a plan C, because this is plan B, like, the atrium isn't even, you know, building the new courthouse was plan A, and then the atrium is plan B, and I don't see a plan C. Are we gonna go back to plan A? And if so, I feel like we can't be flip-flopping. And I've met with several elected officials last week, and they all asked me, where are we at on the atrium? And this, you know, and these were court people who were asking because they wanted to, you know, design their space. I mean, they're there and they need the space. I mean,
I guess, let me do just a quick follow-up on that. We always talk about where we have to be flexible and be able to adjust for what the times gives us to deal with. And I would ask that you take a look in all the parking lots at all the office buildings around this that the state has, and the parking lots here at the courthouse. And they're all relatively empty because we've adjusted to how we do business. And now we're working from home. And that whole space need thing needs to be reviewed after we get through this. When are we gonna get through it? I don't know.
so maybe it's smart to be leasing a building and not building a $300 million courthouse.
Well, it might be
Aren't we
better.
doing the right thing?
No, because the 7-year lease is a commitment, 7-year lease. And I don't think we need it. I really do not feel, now, I can tell you all the elected officials probably, that proposed a new courthouse downtown, I guess everybody was against it. Everybody was for it, except me. I was against it. But now we've got changing times, so I'm not particularly worried about making other elected officials unhappy, because I can look around the parking lots here, and all the parking lots are empty. And they're not only empty here, they're empty at all the state office buildings that I've been to, all of them. And I just think it's a sign of the times. I can tell you Pierce County canceled many of their leases, and they're hanging their hat on the fact that about 1/3 of their workforce is working from home. It changed the dynamics a lot. You still see that even with your big corporate people. They've been postponing this return to the office. And they're realizing the fact that it's not gonna be the same as it was. Now, what is it gonna be? We really don't know. But it's never gonna return to what it was. And it's reflected regularly in traffic, which traffic is kind of bad certain times, you know, if you're going to Seattle. It's not as bad as it was. And it's, I think therein is the solution. But
So
I
that's a
agree, it's a
proposal.
democratic process.
There's a proposal from Commissioner Edwards. I hear from Commissioner Mejia that you'd like to keep the lease from the financial point of view, Commissioner Messer.
Yeah, I know. It's just gonna create a whole other set of problems. I just, yeah,
Okay.
it's not.
I
So-
feel like we've been able to keep up with it. I'm sorry, just to kind of keep digging, digging the hole. We've been able to keep up with it, you know, with COVID times, just because some offices have their, some staff teleworking right now, and that's why they haven't been really down our throats, but they're even tight. And we can't compare ourselves to a private company because, our main service is to the public, and we have to have people out on the front desk to be able to serve the public. If not, we would have a lot of angry residents, I think that's just the nature of the beast. And in all the conversations I've been in with teleworking, it's always been, the older generation who has been like, well, I want to go in there and talk to a human, and, I don't want to call on the phone. I don't want to talk to a machine. I want to talk to a person. And so I feel like just with that, the whole teleworking for government that's outward facing, like the assessor, like the treasurer, like the auditor, like the courts, it's going to be very slow moving. I don't think it's, just because of the needs of people.
I mean, the general government, for example, those elected officials know their business. They know the space they need, they know the personnel they need. They know what we're spending to do this and create more space. And they could come, any one of them could have come in private or in public and said, Commissioner, I need more assessors. I don't need more office space. Like, that's not gonna help my, that would be a message that I would listen to very carefully. Not a single one has said anything like that. It's been all like, yeah, that's an absolutely, and this is prosecuted. It's not just the people. I just picked on them because I know they have lean staffs and they probably could use more people. But it applies to the folks that are going to be in the Superior Court, the District Court, the prosecutors, all the law and justice people that are going to have more space here. Not a single one has said, I don't believe that is a responsible expenditure. I don't need the space. My staff is telecommuting. I need more lawyers. I need more clerks. No, we absolutely need this. And they're the ones. I mean, you're always usually deferential to the opinions and the elected officials and wanting to meet their needs because they know their office and what their needs are. And to a person, they support this. So I'm not sure why you would sit there. I mean, I'm not picking on you, but I'm not sure why you would sit there and go, I know better than all of you about what, I listened to all of those perspectives and I haven't heard any pushback. I've heard, support for Plan B. And it's way cheaper. You can talk about money, but it's way cheaper than what we were planning to do previously. Yeah.
I guess, for me, the bottom line is, I don't work for all those other elected officials. I work for the citizens of Thurston County. And I believe I have pretty good contacts with the citizens. And that's, I guess, where I'll let it lie. That's where I'm at. I work for the citizens and everything I do is based on that.
And so does Mary Hall, and so does Stephen Drew, and so does
Well,
Schnaza.
They have all different views. That's what makes this country great, right?
Yeah, appreciate the conversation, Commissioner. So the question remains, how we're gonna be able to address the revenue gap. And again, the strategy presented from the staff is to shift funds from the corrections to the detention sales tax and reduce the road levy shift from 500,000 to 250,000. So what is the?
I'm just gonna make it simple. I support detention sales tax, reducing the levy shift by half, going back to our original goal of 250 and eliminating the JASCOM funding for this time. That's my proposal and I could be satisfied with that.
I support the 400,000 detainer sales tax. I support the $250,000 reduction. It hurts, but I support it. I want a little bit more conversation about the JASCOM.
He wants to eliminate the atrium. I mean, that's
No, but
3 proposals to get there.
Yeah, but you already
Okay,
So if you two can't agree, then I guess I gotta agree with one of you, right?
I guess.
Well, let's take one at a time.
Yeah.
The shift of 400,000 out of the general fund to detention sales tax. It looks like that's, I got 2 thumbs up. What do you think about that one?
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go along with Commissioner Mejia's response.
Okay,
And, but I think I'm still gonna go with funding the 250 for, isn't that about what it
Animal
was for
services?
the jazz
All right,
con thing? I
so-
think I'm gonna go for the full vote as laid out with
like Commissioner Mejia,
I
so,
mean, I'm not gonna vote for the atrium, no matter what I do.
but I understand that,
No,
and
no,
that's
That
a
conversation
given.
already,
That's
But
a
we gotta
different
move away
conversation.
from that because
Yeah.
that's kind of been decided on a 2-to-1. So what I'm hearing is the atrium stays in, we're gonna do the shift of 400,000 out of the general fund to the
detention, so.
detention sales tax, and the levy shift will be reduced by 250 instead of 500,000. So we've got decisions on those items. Let's come back, let's look at a few of these other things and then come back to animal services.
Yeah, I was gonna propose that because there's
There's some other things on this list.
there's more requests now, and depending on where my seatmates go on that, I may argue more vociferously than I am now.
Right. So, there are a few items from ARPA that we needed to revisit. And that's the items under the second blue line, American Recovery Plan Act.
Okay.
The first is the board approved website support in public health to be paid by ARPA. And when we did the eligibility review, this needs to be much more tightly linked to the website project than having a public health type person in public health. So what we're proposing to ensure eligibility for ARPA is instead of putting that FTE in public health, that we do more of a technical type position assigned to Megan, who has the lead on the website project. Wrap it in as part of the website project, and then have that person available to do the public health and all the other offices and departments, the assistance they're gonna need to support the project. So it's still funding a position, it'll still cost about this much, it just won't be in public health. Public health will still get the help that they need.
It'll just make the ARPA police more.
Exactly, it makes it easier for us to justify paying it out of
Accepting of the
ARPA.
situation is what I.
That's the first time I've heard that term.
Yeah, the ARPA police, love it.
Okay,
So if that's okay,
I'm
that'll
good.
be a change that we
I'm
make.
okay with
I
that.
gotta go along with the police.
All right.
All right.
The next item is the environmental health specialist. This person was going to help with the food inspection backlog. The backlog was caused by COVID. No one's arguing that there's a backlog. I don't think you've got any argument that the backlog was caused by COVID, but the ARPA police are saying that this is not an eligible activity. So we cannot fund this from the recovery fund. And the reason we can do the court backlog is because US Treasury has specifically said court backlog is eligible. Other backlogs, you have to look at the body of work that would be done, and this work is not considered eligible.
This is not a good comparison, but darned if I can understand how sewer systems become eligible and food inspection is not.
Because
I
they're
just don't get it.
specifically called out.
Right, I mean, how they they passed the legislation, it was
And
specifically.
specifically put that in there.
Specifically is in there.
Oh.
And called, yeah.
There's a good example of, for the citizens to try and figure out what we deal with when we try to figure out how government comes up with
Truly,
their solution, but that's what they did, and that's what we have to live with, I guess.
that's right. So I've got two pieces on how to resolve this because they do need the help to clear the backlog. One is you, in this budget, go ahead and fund it 100% out of environmental health. The money's in the fund, it's a one-time cost, it lasts 1 year, it'll get them out of the hole.
And get them through the backlog.
That's right.
That's
So
not general fund.
that's correct, it's not general fund, it's the environmental health fund.
Hard for me to argue against
So-
But
that.
it's not affecting other things that we are spending.
No, if everything else can remain in place, there's enough fund balance to fund this for a year. The other piece of this that I'm proposing is, when I let public health know that this body of work as a whole is not eligible, what I asked them is, I can see that environmental health staff are doing things that are related to COVID, where if they would track their time, if they're responding to complaints of violating the masking policy or the social distancing policy, or they're providing guidance to a restaurant or a school or the pool people, that is, how do you operate within the COVID guidelines? If they're providing that kind of service, then if they'll track their time, we could charge that time to the recovery fund, to the extent that they're not already charging it to one of the other COVID awards. So while the budget would look like this, I could spend a little time with the public health finance people and the environmental health folks and see if we can't charge some of that time to ARPA. We can't do it all as a whole, but we could find a path forward to alleviating some of the burden on the environmental health fund. So we can do that.
Sounds good to me.
All right,
Okay
So-
with that, Commissioner?
all right. The next set of items is things that we discovered after October 28th. They're unanticipated. The last two are new grants, and the amount of spending is less than the amount of the grant award. So my recommendation is just say yes to the grants.
Where is that?
So there's a CPED, it's item A33603, and a public health item
You're
A34001.
talking about this next block.
Yep, it's the next block.
The sheriff stuff, we have to fund that, right?
The sheriff's is an impact, it's only $20,000 a year. It's, anyway, it's $20,000 a year. I provided the letter to you that showed that the rates are going up, it's out of their control. And I would add the $20,000 is not gonna affect.
Why couldn't that be covered out of, FTE?
FTE savings?
Yeah, savings.
You could certainly ask that the sheriff
Because I
absorb
really
this
think-
cost.
Those two are going to mesh as we go forward, with hiring problems and such.
So here, I see your hand up, I'll get to you, but I wanna respond. The sheriff's office says that if you don't do it here, that they're gonna come back in the supplemental amendment. So if you're not gonna say yes now, then don't say yes then.
Well, no, I
If-
mean, I just think that we're gonna have it, because there's gonna be, I don't know how many empty positions he's got now.
I think he's going to have more than enough reversion savings to cover
Oh, I
this,
do
but
too.
I'm putting it forward.
No, I really do. I
Okay,
think this is gonna be a different year.
Commissioner Mejia.
So I have a question. So with that, I mean, let's say for corrections, for example, we approved the 13,986.
Yeah.
So, and then so on top of the 13,000, it came like with another 12,000, so it would be like 26,000 total.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, they knew that the academy costs were going up, they didn't know it was gonna be this much. So,
So the
I guess it's
proposal,
an example of inflation.
so the proposal I got from Commissioner Edwards is to approve this request, but they will absorb it.
of course,
And
they're
what-
gonna have to pay, they're
Right.
gonna have to pay.
What
if
was
they
the
can absorb.
vacancy, what was the,
How many vacancies was he
no,
telling you?
how much was the reversion? Wasn't it exceptionally high all the way, if you lump the county together this year?
Yeah, it's over it'll be over 7 million.
7% or something, right?
Yeah.
Some crazy amount
Yeah.
that we've never experienced.
Yes,
But,
with a few 100,000 coming from the sheriff.
yeah, and so I don't see people lining up to be deputy sheriffs for a while.
They can absorb
I
this.
think they can, I mean, it's a reality.
Commissioner Menzer, fund or absorb?
Fine.
Fund? Okay, Commissioner Mejia, you've got the deciding vote on this,
We'll go with Commissioner Edwards.
to absorb, all right. And you're okay with the grants?
Yep.
All right. The next two items are a little more fun. These are things that you could spend money on. In REIT 2, you could create some type of a program that could invest about $1 million a year. There's that much capacity in REIT 2. And there's a lot of funding for trail projects or studies of trail projects in this budget, but what I have suggested here is you could use REIT 2 and create a Connect the Trails program, so that there's $1 million a year to work on a segment of the trail system in each year out of REIT 2. And then Public Works would bring to you, just like they do with the culvert program, the fish passage barrier program, they would bring to you, here are our priority projects and kind of a schedule, and the board would approve which parts to do when. So you could do a trail project. Now, there's other things you could do with REIT 2 with this $1 million. If you have other ideas, I was just throwing something out.
And that was, the board wanted to have somewhat of a signature project for you to consider. I think this is banking on the success of the fish barrier removal program successful. This also may be along the same lines, and also will allow to secure additional funding when you have seed money. So it really extrapolates that, and I believe the board members have received some feedback. There is an opportunity to expand the trail system to other jurisdictions, particularly South County. So, and that was in response to that.
Right. So before you have a conversation on that, I would just let you know that Romero and Elizabeth and I had a conversation about using REIT 2 for the Brewery Park Visitor Center, and it is not allowable cost for that project out of REIT 2, which is why you see the second item on this list. You do have capacity in the Historic Preservation Fund. You could offer that project about $100,000, not 500,000, but it's something, if you should want to do that, there's a little money there, but you cannot pay for that out of REIT 2.
Commissioner Mejia, questions or comments on those two?
the Let's Connect Trail projects this is timely. So at the Transportation Policy Board, we were having a discussion, and it was a very large discussion about trails and kind of, you know, where they are and many projects that are coming up, and, you know, like the Woodland Trail and just the maintenance of them and partnering even more for, you know, to support each other with the maintenance of all these trails. So I feel like there's a lot of community interest all throughout. So I think this is definitely a great thing, Robin. I'm in support of it. I feel like most of the conversations, you know, when I get reached out, and it's, you know, for our parks, it's usually in regards to trails and how we can expand them more, and so I'm in support of this.
Commissioner Oates, any comments?
Are we gonna run into difficulties when we talk about maintenance and REIT 2? I thought there was some restrictions.
So there is, in REIT 2, there are certain prohibitions against using REIT 2 unless you qualify under certain circumstances. You cannot use the money for operation and maintenance.
That's what I'm,
but-
that portion.
So maintaining the trail system, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and
just
it
like-
would be the same strategies the Public Works currently has to maintain the trail system as it is. So we'll be adding to that, and I believe there's capacity to do that.
So here's one place to get capacity for that. If we use $1, and I literally mean $1, out of conservation futures towards the project, then you can use conservation futures. And what Public Works has told me is the board allocates, used to be 15%, but now 25% is the legal maximum that you can allocate from conservation futures for operation and maintenance for properties purchased with money from that fund. And Public Works is not using the full 25% because we don't have enough properties purchased with that fund that qualify. So if we put just a tiniest bit of conservation futures money along with a substantial amount of REIT 2, then they can charge more of the maintenance cost and use the full 25% allocation. And that will cover some of the new cost of maintaining the trails.
That sounds,
But also, if you keep in mind, it takes capacity from the conservation futures. And so it's all that,
I know, but if we don't drain
We
the fund.
already count that money out. So it won't reduce capacity in conservation futures. We assume in every future year, the Public Works will use their full allocation, and they're not.
but I thought it was only 15%, not the 25.
No, it's 25.
So on REIT 2, I'm trying to get a sense of, so we can't, according to what county manager said, we can't support the brewery part because something about the involvement of a nonprofit.
The project is operated, the property is owned by a nonprofit, and the project is the project of a nonprofit.
So if it were a jurisdiction, that's okay then?
If it were owned
Like
and the
Tumwater?
project was a local government, yes, if it was owned by the city of Tumwater,
So we-
then
So we could work, for example, on a trail segment within the city of Tumwater
yes, we could.
with REIT 2, if it was a connection.
What about the Port of Olympia?
What about it?
Well, I mean, if they were to take that on.
What
Or the,
The visitor center?
yeah, instead of Tumwater. I mean, I have nothing against Tumwater, I'm just saying, Is
Yeah,
there-
that's a public
is-
agency.
Yeah, it's a public entity and they do some things that they want to be partnered with others on.
Yeah, but that will be part of the nonprofit group who is advocating for this project to reach out to any jurisdiction.
Sure.
So I don't think it will be the county's role to ask the Port of Olympia or Tumwater to take over this project, just to make it
Yeah, I
electric.
mean, I'm really not, I'm thinking about the trail program, not so much about the brewery center, because we've got trail segments in Tumwater, we have trail segments in Olympia, and then we have trail segments almost in the South County.
Right.
And
And
I'm curious whether
basically-
all of those would be at our, be able to be, deployed this resource toward any of those projects. I mean, there's the Olympia piece that's trying to connect to the Capitol Forest. There's the Tumwater piece that's trying to connect all the way down to the Chehalis Western. And then we've got the gate, whatever you call it, gate to Belmore or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like 3 big chunks of trail system that this community is little by little trying to piece together.
Right.
And I like,
The regional approach is I think, for me, is a great opportunity for the board to consider.
So yes, you can, and you would do so by entering into an interlocal agreement under RCW, I think it's 3934. We looked up exactly which code that is. But that allows you to enter into an interlocal agreement, and the laws that govern REAP specifically call that out as allowable with other local jurisdictions.
okay, so my comments are, yes on the trails. Trails is where I wanted that money to go, and this is an expansion of my original idea of kind of making a programmatic thing, so that's great, that's a great idea. Yes, I definitely want to support the Brewery Visitor Center, because that historic preservation fund, we've always kind of talked about, how can we do more with it? We do the little grants, and those are great, but to do something, to be able to contribute, there's capacity there. We've looked at the 10-year financial plan. To be able to contribute to something that has a bigger potential impact, I think would be great.
And that ties in with economic development as well.
On point, yes.
And I'm also in support of using $1 out of conservation futures. So we can use that capacity for,
Tap into the maintenance.
yeah,
Yeah, that may be probably when Public Works has the opportunity to gel the idea as a potential project. That is when the board may use that strategy of putting $1. But at this point, I think creating that umbrella, I think, is adequate.
yeah,
So
no,
what I'm hearing for the 2 options is a unanimous 3-0, right?
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
My
Okay.
$25,000 wasn't.
For what?
So, I thought the whole project, they asked, I don't know why, naive, I guess, was gonna be $25,000, so I was just like, oh, we have,
For which project?
for the Tumwater Brewery, the
Oh.
visitor center. And,
I
when they
think they
came.
wanted $500,000.
Yeah, and when I called and I asked, I was like, well, how much, how much is gonna be the ask? They were like 500 million. I was just like,
500.
oh, or 500,000. Yeah, it hit me right in the.
Right, well, I couldn't scrape up $500,000, but I did scrape together 100,000 that you were able to offer.
This is great though. Thank you, Robin.
Sure. All right, so that was the fun part of the morning. Here is the harder part of the conversation. Yeah,
And maybe a suggested approach for the board not to get into, winners or losers type of a situation on the reconsideration. The board may consider any reconsideration that is only one time. Just 1 year, not necessarily an ongoing.
Because we've got that one time.
Yeah, so, and that may be something that you may consider as you go through each one of those requests for reconsideration. And that, is something more of a more of a policy level type of position that you may be in, as opposed to getting into individuals that have an argument of what would be, my words, winners or losers in this request.
You guys want to take 10 minutes, and I think it's a good stopping point, and we're halfway through. Let's reconvene at 10:30.
Yep.
And we'll have another full hour.
Great.
Get in there. Speaking of making sausage, Commissioner.
Okay, welcome back. It's 10:29 and we're picking back up with our work session regarding the budget, final budget deliberations. We have another hour and we're picking back up with some reconsideration requests, I believe,
Right.
which we gave that opportunity to every office and department.
Every office and department, I sent out an email after the board was finished with your deliberations and had set the preliminary budget. I let offices and departments know then, and I did a follow-up email to everyone letting them know that if they wanted any item to be reconsidered, they could send a memo or just an email to Romero and I. We received 5, which I have passed along. The document sent to us has been provided to each of you for reconsideration. The 5 items that we received were a request from the treasurer for the balance of the one item he asked for, and this would be retirement leave buyout for a person who's retiring. The board funded $20,000 for the treasurer to have an overlap of staff for the person who's retiring. But you did not fund the $15,000 in leave buyout.
And that's a one-time expense,
It is a one-time $15,000 expense. Now, my recommendation to you is to say no to this because you got a lot of requests for leave buyout and you chose to enact
We do
leave buyout
25%
fund at 25%. It doesn't cover everything.
But it covers everybody, the 25%.
Everybody for 25% for all types of funds. So it is gonna create some relief, but the treasurer is asking you to reconsider his ask.
But just if I remember correctly, this ask reflects that he understands that he'll get this 25%, but this is his residual need that he's requesting.
He
I
was
think
asking
that-
for 20, now he's asking for 15, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think that
The overall
the
request
original,
was
this might be
30,
50%.
35, and you funded 20. And the
But the
original-
20 is for the overlap
Yeah,
in
but
it was
staffing.
two things
it
in
was
one.
2 things in one. It
Right.
was total 35, then the board made a decision to fund the 20 and the leave buyout 15. And I provided, he's gonna incur those costs. And he has a very tight budget. So,
He does have a tight budget, but his 2% cut was restored last year. And not only the 2%, but more than the amount of the cut was restored to the treasurer's budget. He does run very tight. It's a small budget. But if you fund this, and to your question, Commissioner Mensah, I believe that this was 50% of the estimate, because going into the budget, the agency request, if you will, was that the new leave buyout fund would be at 50% of the buyout, and you reduced that to 25% due to the cost. But I think the treasurer had estimated what 50% would be. So this doesn't cover the full 75% of his share. I'd have to double check that with
I
him.
think you're right, so I just,
Yeah, for me, I see, I think this was what we discussed, the policy aspect of it and trying to be consistent. But I'm also seeing Ramiro's side where he's saying, he does run a very tight budget and
I I see this as very analogous to the situation we had on a budget amendment with the coroner. And I think those really small departments are kind of, have to be treated. I mean, we often come in and coroner and treasurer don't even ask for anything.
That's true.
And
This
so-
was his only ask.
I mean, so it's like, you build up credit when you, with commissioners, I think, when you do that. When you come in, I mean, when we have whole budget amendment cycles where there's a packet this thick and there's nothing from the treasurer, your credibility then when you come in and go, I really need this extra flex, is heightened. I don't want to be inconsistent about the leave buyout, you know, but it's, you can call it whatever you want to call it. In the corners, I think the reason I say in the corner, because there was a point where, and this was before the autopsy and
Right.
stuff, it was a previous thing where
We just had to bail him out.
he was just, things had gotten tight and there just wasn't that much margin. And that's where I feel like this is analogous to me to that. And I'd like to find a way to get there without calling it something that seems like it's inconsistent on leave buyout.
If I may, you know, I think the board made a very good effort to find the first priorities for just about every single office and department. And you were very diligent in just going through that. You asked the office and departments, what is their first priority? They responded on that. You made an effort to find that. In this case, it was only one ask. And I understand your perspective, but it's only one ask.
And we only gave him half of
They
it.
don't give half of it, so.
So you could approach this as, it's not, you know, here's what you did with Public Works and Parks. You set an amount of money and you're trusting the Director of Public Works to manage it how she sees fit. I would suggest that you add $15,000 to create capacity in the treasurer's budget and he can manage it as he sees
A
fit.
one-time 15,000.
Yeah, one time. It's one
That's
time.
what I want to do.
Okay,
And
I
that's what I
agree.
suggested at the beginning, for you to approach all the requests on that
Yeah.
approach.
We'll call it
One time.
capacity, not buyout, and he'll manage as he sees fit.
Commissioner,
Yep, he's up.
Yep, cool. Oh, that's a yes. The next item is from the IT department. It is the infrastructure, consolidating our data storage. And Romero, perhaps you'd like to speak
Yeah.
to this.
So in this, the reason they're bringing for your consideration, and I understand the conversation related to, you know, going to the cloud, and I know that board would like to have that perspective as part of the overall business. The concern that, in talking with Dennis, the concern is the aging infrastructure that we have. And we're gonna have to replace those servers. So my proposal, in coordination with Dennis, for you to consider authorizing this one time is not general fund. We can manage the IT reserves with the understanding that we'll come back to the board next year with a comprehensive approach as to how the cloud can be part of our future business. My concern is no funding this request at this point is going to put a really difficult position not to be able to replace this very key piece of infrastructure. And I understand the conversation of the cloud, and I believe, talking with Dennis, if the board approves this, is a condition that we need to bring back a comprehensive plan as to how the county needs to move forward into the future that includes a cloud-based approach.
I was the biggest opponent to this. I think Commissioner Everett follows suit.
I was just following you because I don't know much about this topic, and
So-
I try not to claim I do.
For me, I'm willing to change my vote with the caveat that we do have that conversation on how we're gonna move to the future. Because I you know, I don't wanna keep spending money on this aging infrastructure that has to be replaced every once in a while when there's other systems in place for us not to do this. So I mean, for me, I guess, I'll support it with that caveat that we're gonna have
Yeah,
that
with
conversation.
condition, Yeah, that's a condition that I'm offering the board.
I think I supported this to begin with.
You did, it was,
I don't remember, but I guess I would just trust the county manager and the IT director to manage, since it's not general fund, I'll trust them to manage
makes
the
it
IT
easier.
reserves.
That makes it easier.
So what I'm hearing is the board supports this request with the understanding we need to come back with a plan. Thank you.
Thank you, because this was one of my bigger concerns.
Okay.
All right. The next item is from Emergency Services. There was a request in the budget to increase the emergency management operating costs by $8,000 per year. I'm afraid that I can't champion this request.
My recommendation, commissioners, is the rest of the items are ongoing. And my recommendation for you to say no to all the ongoing costs.
I'm gonna vote no on these.
Please, well.
I'm with it.
Okay, so no three requests is no.
So that's no to emergency management.
No to all three. That's what
We're
we're
all three, no to all three?
Yeah.
Did all three of you were
I
on board?
want to ask my seatmates, I got a call from Commissioner Wilson, or from Judge Wilson. And I think I'm going to do it this afternoon, I
Come
think.
on.
So am I.
Oh, really?
Me
Okay.
too.
And out
Not
of,
me, I guess I'm not special.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But the topic wasn't mentioned.
No,
For me.
Not for me either.
Not for me either.
So I only bring that up.
Well, I feel left out.
Well, we can defer it till tomorrow, I guess,
You could.
just to make sure that there's not a piece of information we don't have. I've already heard the pitch from, in a separate meeting, so I kind of heard the plea for, and I read, there's a letter, right?
There is a letter.
So I've read all that, and I think it's like many things, it's a very valid request. I'm overwhelmed with the new things that we're doing, and it's the most substantial, it's just a lot.
I don't know that it's gonna make, I don't know if that's the topic, first of all. I do know that Judge Wilson is retiring, and she probably drew the short straw. What, can you see if you can talk to those commissioners?
I don't
What's
know.
that?
Did she retire, you said?
No, okay, did I say retiring? No, sorry,
Oh,
no.
so that's what my suggestion was, if we are supposed to, get into the conversation, because every single reconsideration perhaps has is valuable, is a value added.
Well, my
And my
concern,
recommendation is, at this point, I think you have made a great effort in considering not funding any ongoing.
I mean, the two things that I'll share, because I had a meeting, was, one is that I think was a little upsetting, was that, to the Superior Court, was that they had crafted this plan that basically they gave up a position in juvenile
Yep.
court that was gonna basically fund about a third. And then we took that, but not, didn't give them the position. And then second, it was their number 2 priority out of their fairly lengthy list, so they were kind of like, why did all this other stuff go, but not this?
Can I make a
Those
comment
were
to
the two
that?
things that I heard.
But the thing about it is their first request were 2 positions. I mean, it was a judicial assistant and a court reporter. So for me, I took that as priority 1 and priority 2. And that's the way I saw it, because it was 2 positions in 1 request. And, I feel I thought we were very fair with them.
don't we have a brand new person in that position now?
Court administrator, yeah, they
And,
just started out.
Give it time.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is, we think the past court administrator did pretty good, but maybe this one is even gonna be better, I don't know.
It seems overwhelming when you're brand new.
Yeah, and so, let's just see how it goes, I'm kind of,
Judge Wilson was talking about being proactive,
I don't know.
not reactive. I understand the argument, I don't have any problem with it, and it'll be something that I'll keep top of mind for future. But I just,
for something farther down the road to consider.
yeah, I'm just not.
Yeah, let's see how things go with the new person, and see if they can make it work, because Pam made it work, I guess.
So to confirm, the ongoing request, which 3 line items are none.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I just wanted to kind of clarify who was talking
Thank you.
about what.
Okay. All right. There's a new thing that's not on this page that we became aware of just yesterday afternoon. And that is, in the assessor's office, the board approved for the assessor to purchase software called Just Appraised software. And the arrangement was that the assessor would pay for the first year out of his current budget and absorb that cost. And then next year, the board would add funding to be able to pay the ongoing costs, and you did. You've approved the ongoing cost in next year's budget, and then it'll be built into the rates in future years. Well, the assessor sent the invoice to financial services for payment, and because it was laid out like a subscription, there's an accounting rule that says you cannot pay for services before they're received. So even though accounting services would prepay the year, only either 3 or 4 months would come out of the 2021 budget, and the remaining 7 or 8 months, 8 or 9 months, have to come out of the 22 budget. Well, the assessor doesn't have that much money in the 22 budget. So what we are proposing to address this is that we take, it's about $34,000 that the assessor would have spent this year on it. In the supplemental or the budget amendment, will reduce the assessor's budget by $34,000. And in the first year of next biennium in 22, will increase his budget one time by the same amount, and he can get there that way.
It's just like rolling over money.
It is carrying
Yes, and
forward money he would have spent. Did you hear back from him that that's
No, but
acceptable?
That was my proposal, because in one of his recommendations was to carry over.
Carry over, and
Was
that's
it
what
a
it does.
$45,000 item originally?
Yes, and we can only pay for part of it this year. This completely
Yeah, okay, I'm
satisfies
just trying to remember.
accounts payable.
So
There's
for
no
the
risk of an
things there is-
audit finding.
And the only mechanism they would carry over, this is what Robin described.
Right.
And I think that will probably get to where the assessor needs to be.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, excellent. And we can let them know that that's taken care of. Then on the next page, are technical corrections. These are already factored into the forecast.
So what page are you looking at?
Page, the back of the chart,
Oh, she's already
Yeah,
filed
that's
that
on
one.
page 2.
Sorry.
it says page 101, but it's not,
I know, it's,
it's really page 2.
both of them say page 1.
Got it.
Page 2 of 2.
Excel, I've been working with it for 40 years, you'd think I would have figured that part out. So, under technical corrections, the budget book, the board approved a jury administrator FTE at Chandler Court only if it were to be paid out of ARPA. So in the budget book, it's still out of general fund, we just need to move it to ARPA, and I need to make you aware that we're doing that because it was a change in the published document. And the same thing is true of the 3 deputy FTEs who will be at Chandler Court, also need to be paid from ARPA. So we just need to make the entry into the system to take them out of general fund and put it into ARPA. So that's very
Well, I didn't
straightforward.
think those 3 deputies ever were, in
They've
general
never been
fund.
paid from the general fund. You're correct, they never have been.
Okay,
So it's booked in Questica that way, it is not reflected in the forecast that I've shared with you that way. But we just need to make the change in the system. And then these last 3 items are fund balances. We just need to make very minor adjustments. So you might recall that $22,000 that the expenditures in the recovery fund were more than the revenue. That's
know.
gotta get changed.
I don't remember it myself.
That's out of
Why
the
Did we
revenue
discuss
hearing,
it?
just from last night.
Oh, I think I was already overwhelmed last night.
Yeah, there was a lot of information in the last few days. I can totally see where you might not recall that.
Can't draw on recent events, just
Yeah,
long past events.
but these are just very minor changes that just need to be made in the system so every fund is balanced. So it's technical, and I'm just letting you know that we're going in and doing these things. With those decisions, the last remaining thing, let's see, how much gets added to, this is so you've only added 37,000 in 2022 and 21,000 in ongoing costs. Oh, no, you didn't. You didn't even add that.
No, they're going
You said to absorb. So the only added cost is the 16,000 for the treasurer. Yeah, that's it. So the last remaining item is, if you wanna get that graph, what do you wanna do to take the graph up? And the item that's on the table is animal services.
Before you go to that, I'd like to go,
Oh,
you have a letter in front of you.
sorry.
This is related to the salary commission. The salary commission have a special meeting this coming Monday, so it's in the afternoon. We will be consider taking an action on this to provide recommendations to revise the salaries of elected officials here in the county. So there's a 2-part question in here, and I have a recommendation for you. Is traditionally, all the increases for to the elected officials have been absorbed by the office and departments, number one. Secondly, it seems to be very unusual to see the auditor being proposed to be making more money than other elected officials, including the commissioners. So that seems to be a little bit of an interesting recommendation. My recommendation is for you to continue to practice to be equal to all elected officials, because that will provide an unequal playing field to all the elected officials, including the commissioners. Although your salary, you cannot take an action on that. That will be submitted to the auditor, and you will not be taking an action on that. But you do have an option to accept the recommendations, change the recommendations, or deny the recommendations of the Charter Commission to all the elected officials. So traditionally, the prosecutor attorney, the sheriff, and the sheriff have been always a little bit outside of that role. But again, this recommendation for the auditor to make more than all the elected officials, including yourself, seems to be very unusual. So I'd just like to bring this to your attention because you will most likely take an action on this next Friday as part of the budget process. And my recommendation is for you to be consistent in terms of all the increases to all the other elected officials to be the same.
I have a question. What were the salaries before
Yeah.
the raise?
So the commissioners, the assessor, the clerk, and the coroner, and the treasurer, this recommendation includes a 4.2% increase
5% for the auditor.
and 7% to the auditor. And for the prosecuting attorney is 2.2% increase.
Well,
And the prosecuting attorney is more aligned to the judges.
Was there a rationale given by the
No, so I won't be able to tell you.
hazard pay?
the assessor ought to get that.
Yeah, so. Anyway, and again, I know they're gonna be suffering the consequences of this. And I'm looking from the business point of view, that's what I provide a recommendation for you to be consistent on all elected officials. Outside from the sheriff and the prosecuting attorney, because they have been traditionally a little bit different.
I just want to make, there's one thing I've always done, and so I don't know, Commissioner Mejia has never heard it, but the whole time I've been an elected official, I've been going to the salary commission and saying that I didn't feel any incumbent should receive a raise while they're in that current cycle. And I'm always told, well, that'll make it difficult because Ty will make more than you and I. The cycles, just using us as an example, or we'll make more than whatever the cycle is. But to me, I just, all the elected officials know what the salary is when they sign up. And I've even kind of acquiesced to, okay, a cost of living, because, you know, maybe just have that be rather generic. So I'm on record down there at the salary commission, and sometimes I can't win. I tell Ruth, well, just read my last letter.
We don't, I mean,
And-
they don't get cost of living. There's been stretches
Oh,
where there was
yes.
no cost of living.
No, I know, and I've never said that, well, okay, you know, I've accepted cost of living could be an exception. I don't know what's going on here with Mary, but because I've still maintained that same philosophy, I'm not saying they're wrong with me, but so I can't approve, I mean, I you know, I like what Mary does, but I don't see the difference. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I want to remain consistent. And then we don't have any say on what we do, but I have to say, I am glad that we're all going to get the same thing, because in our own way, I think we're all, we try to run a county without the assessor, you know, or without the treasurer, or without the auditor, you know. So.
Commissioner Mejia heard I mean, there's complexities here that we've gone through numerous times before you were on the board. So the commissioners cannot, we have to accept our own salary recommendation. We can't go. So even if whatever they do, we have to, but then we actually have authority to not accept, right?
To not
Everybody else.
accept, revise, or
but not for ourselves.
Not for yourselves.
Which is the weird thing of like where, like, let's say the board wanted to hold salaries across the board, but the salary commission recommended a raise that included us. Well, we'd be in this weird position of like having to give ourselves a raise, but then hold everybody else. So we, it's like no one's gonna do that. So last year we asked them, and they don't have to agree with us, but we asked them just not to give anybody a raise, and they did agree with that.
They didn't
Due to the
recommend
COVID.
it. Yeah,
Due to
they
COVID,
didn't
it's,
recommend that, so I think they are coming back, and I believe the 4.2% is.
I guess my counter argument to what you're saying, Ramiro, is the salary commission is supposed to do its job. If we wanted to do what you suggest, we should be directing them. These salaries should be reduced or raised in tandem or not, and then they would do that. But we've given them those levers of control. I don't know why they decided to do with 7% for the auditor, but it's within their purview. I'm not going to, as a just per se matter of course, say you're wrong. Now, if I can think of a reason, like Commissioner Edwards made an argument that was pretty good. Well, but I mean, I'm not just gonna like out of the box say, I reject it because you've done something different. We gave them that power. We didn't tell them the assessor had to be the same as the auditor or the county commissioners had to be the same. So they exercise their discretion, and I'll have to look a little deeper into, maybe I'll watch the meeting or whatever and see what is it recorded what their deliberations were that I can watch?
Yes.
I don't know if it's recorded, I think it's.
Well, I'm not saying it's on, that you can watch it, I think you can listen to
It's
it.
a meeting, yeah. you can listen.
Anyway, I'll look more closely. There may be a good reason for it, and we've given them that power. I don't know I'm not know that I'm for it or against it at this point.
My recommendation has nothing to do with whether the salary commission has done something right, wrong, or different. My recommendation comes from an even playing field of how you see the salaries of all elected officials. And with all due respect, the commissioners have much more responsibility than the auditor, by far.
Yes.
And I just leave it there. There is not even comparison on that. So.
The sheriff, I've heard, and the auditor, I'm trying to think, several department groups, elected officials, have made arguments to the salary commission that have nuances and, whether it's about succession and what the deputy makes and whether it's cost of living and not. There's 3 or 4 different strands of argument I've heard. Some of which apply to all of them, some of which are specific to what they do. I'll have to think about it, but I appreciate that suggestion, because I didn't even actually know that we were all, I never pay much attention to this, frankly, and I didn't know that we were all aligned except for the prosecutor and the sheriff. I thought we were all different anyway, so I sort of processed the fact that we were all
So
the same.
I'm not asking because the recommendations from the salary commission has not come forth, but it's something you will be consider taking an action next week. So.
Prior boards have actually made a conscious effort to keep them the same.
I guess, I've never went to the salary commission and asked for a raise. I was sheriff for 20 years, never did. And I've never done it here as commissioner either. So let them make their decision, whatever that decision is. But I do think when we have something that's inconsistent to the plan, I don't mind invoking our authority at that point. That's kind of where I'm at on this issue. So I don't need any more explanation. I want to, and I've got nothing against Mary. I think she does a great job. But I'm inclined to keep all of them the same, except the 2 different ones, the commissioner, or the sheriff and the prosecuting attorney. I'm fine with. They've made that determination for whatever reason, and so I want to have the auditor be the same as the rest of them.
And that would be a 4.2 increase for the auditor.
Yep. So it makes them all match. There's a proposal that's been moving forward to try and do that, and I'm going to stick with it.
Questions or-
No, I just appreciate kind of the history of all of this because it gives me good insight.
And maybe at some point, we, maybe 2 years ago, remember, we had a very comprehensive briefing
2019.
on the very different models as to how, particularly the commissioner salaries and also the elected officials, how different models over the years Thurston County has tried. And we landed on this, the most adequate model so far to have a salary commission in place. So, yeah. At some point, maybe in 2022, maybe we can.
There was a
bring
memo, I think Jane Futterman did or something, kind of outlining the different ways we could do it. And basically, all of them are imperfect in one way or another. Like you go through each model and there's some argument why. And so we just kind of landed on the fact that this one's probably the best, keeps us out of the politics of it as much as we can because we don't, you know.
And I think that that's probably, in exercise consistency, in one of the models you may recall, Commissioner, is really what you were arguing at. And it was based on election cycles so that was a very complex model at some point.
I know, I was causing trouble.
Back in the 80s, I believe that model, for some reason, it just didn't
Pretty
gel very
interesting.
well.
I'll see if I think I can probably find that material.
Let me see if I can find it, share that with you.
Are we under the gun on the time thing?
No, it is just we want to bring you because the meeting on the salary commission is coming up on Monday. And as a result of that meeting, they will be sending a formal recommendation to you.
And individuals can go. I went as an individual in the past. And expressed my.
Okay, let's go back to our last item then, if it is indeed the last item.
I think it is the last item. It is the last item. Unless there's something I'm just not aware of or have totally forgotten, and I'm gonna turn to our staff and ask them if I've spaced something out, please speak up. But I'm gonna share my screen, and here's the graph as it stands. And if you were, the item on the table is to take out animal services. That's roughly 250.
245.
240, yep, 245. So if you were to do that, it brings you right up to the target line, right into the future.
I'm sticking with you, Commissioner.
Robin, I'll need this graph printed out or emailed to me.
Yep.
Both versions.
Yep.
If you could.
Sure.
Thank you. Just in case I'm queried as to the details of this.
So where I'm at, I feel like on one hand, I feel we have that responsibility to our county residents to provide the same services as the cities, especially, if the cities have those services and yet, one house has it, the other house, right down the street doesn't. And I feel like that, in a big part, is a huge part of, our responsibility is to provide those services. On the other hand, I'm seeing kind of the long-term financials and not seeing, if it's gonna be good or it's gonna go down and be bad, and just with COLA negotiations, we don't know what that's gonna hold, and so it's
So the big thing on the horizon that could impact spending is the employee survey, the employee salary survey, and inflation. And where that's going to drive the biggest cost in this budget is personnel costs. And if the salary survey says you should be paying significantly more, or if inflation is high, which would drive COLAs up, you may need this capacity.
And that's probably the other perspective you need to consider is no funding animal service at this point will give you capacity for the upcoming year in dealing with perhaps what's coming.
Commissioner Edwards?
I think with the rosy forecast, I guess, even, I don't know what did Darren bump it up, 2 million? What was the difference?
It's 1 million more
1 million
than
bumped it up.
my current.
I'm an eternal optimist. I mean, I know I try to talk about, well, what about if this happens or that happens? I think we've got, pretty stable administration, if you will, right now. You see a big change, at least for a year, coming on that. No guarantees what's gonna happen for sure. So I look at this as a balance between not funding the sheriff enough, but funding another entity that takes a workload off of the sheriff to compensate. And the sheriff wrote a letter that he was in support of this. So I'm willing to give it an attempt to see if it'll work. And I think the difference is on a normal year of a $300 million budget is inconsequential. We got a 7% reversion this year, which is unusual. But a lot of times it's 3.5%, 4%, pretty common. So I think we're okay. And that's kind of where I made my decision on it, a week or so ago. We hadn't talked, so I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Let's stick with it then.
So leave the funding for animal services in.
I mean, things go to pot and handbag,
But then we'll
everything turns
pay it.
upside down, we're gonna be dealing with a lot more than this issue. A lot more.
So I've got one, leave it in.
Mhm.
I've got one, take it out. And you're going with leave it in.
I'm going with leave it in.
So 2 to 1.
All right.
I'll be an optimist as well.
I think the last thing is Robin's going to walk you through the different resolutions we will be considering next Friday.
Okay, all right, let me save this so I don't lose the decisions you've made. And then I'll bring up the page of resolutions. I'm sorry, I should have had it ready to go, and it's just gonna take me a moment to find it.
Could you send me those 2 charts as well, Rob?
I will absolutely make sure all 3 of you receive those.
Was it matching up with what we've been talking about?
Yeah, and it is aligned to your our priorities on the legislative priorities. It is an issue.
I think it's gaining traction is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
talked about it for quite a while.
So there are
It's
quite
not
a
just the bulkhead portion, it's the size, the lanes and stuff too.
So it's is environmental aspect, risk, and capacity.
Okay?
Yep.
Here we go. This is just very quickly a list of the resolutions that you'll be asked to vote on December 17th. And don't forget that on December 14th, you've got the 2 resolutions on property taxes, which will increase the taxes by 1% and add the new construction and all the things. That's, but we have to certify it on Tuesday the 14th. So then on the 17th, this is the list, and I'm presenting it to you now because if you want something pulled out, we need to know so we can do the appropriate paperwork. Please don't come to me at 9 a.m. for a 10 o'clock motion.
We experienced that.
We did that
Not
one
this
year.
board. Not this board.
Yeah, please don't do that to us. So the first item that we'll ask you to vote on is the capital facilities plan. And Commissioner, we will pull out the one item for the atrium so you can vote on it separate. So there'll be 2 resolutions on the CFP. Then the resolution for the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. And the reason that you vote on these first is because the law says that prior to adopting the budget, you need to adopt your capital facilities plan. So even though you do it on the same day, we always make sure in order it comes first. Then, internal services, and I will probably move these around a little bit so that the budget action is actually immediately following the facility plans. But going down the list, there are 2 internal service resolutions that you must adopt. You have to adopt the cost plan, that's the internal service plan from financial services, and you have to adopt the ER&R rates. The law requires that you adopt these every year. So those will come before you. Then, these are the increases in taxes and fees that are assumed in this budget that have been approved by the board.
Do we have a printout of this?
I can certainly print this out for you.
Can you send it to the printer?
I can't send it to the printer from here because I'm not connected on VPN.
Oh.
So I know technical challenges. I have to plug in to be able to print. So you've approved increasing the Lake Lawrence Management District rates and charges. And you've approved increasing the Long Lake Management District rates and charges. You've approved increasing your water and sewer rates and the transportation impact fee rates.
Can I ask about that?
Yes.
So we had a public hearing about water and sewer rates. The board did not take any action or have any follow-up discussion about that. And we had public comment that opposed those rate increases. Is that part of what's in ordinance, the third one there?
Yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about? A couple of citizens said, you hit us with a 10% increase like 2 years ago, and now you're asking for 5. And the board just said, okay, we didn't discuss, we didn't
Okay.
vote, we didn't do anything. I thought we were gonna have a follow-up briefing on that.
You did not follow up at that time because it's in the budget that you would take the vote to approve or deny. But if you've not had a follow-up conversation, then we need to set that up. That would be tomorrow morning. We have time to review the budget tomorrow morning, so that is an outstanding item.
Good catch. I
Yes,
completely blanked on that.
I did too.
Well, because I walked out of there thinking I wasn't necessarily in favor of those increases, but I wanted to see like the financial plan and all that. And so it's just been, it's kind of stuck in my mind that, you know.
No, thank you
that's never come
for,
back up.
thank you. That is,
Was that the Tamashan and Boston Harbor issue? And I remember one lady called in.
A lady for each one, I believe. There were two comments and they were similar, but not exactly the same. And
Yeah, if Jennifer is not listening, I will.
She better get on.
Follow up.
yeah, we'll definitely connect with her and we will do that tomorrow morning. All right, that's why we go over this last list. The other three items there you're okay with, right?
the other three, I'm fine, yeah.
All right. Okay, then there are resolutions on the personnel actions.
I gotta ask you one other thing before you flip,
Yes,
and that's the transportation,
the impact fees.
impact fees. Tell me a little more about that, something isn't adjusting with me right.
The board already approved,
Was that a 2-to-1 vote?
yes.
It's kind of what
I thought that was
They take
already
the
taken
action?
an action. They
We
already
did.
took
I
that
think we
action.
already took that somewhere along.
Okay,
So,
then
I
we'll
don't
take
think
this off the list.
Yeah, because that action was taken by the board.
You guys are really stressing my memory,
2-to-1.
I can tell you that.
Yeah, we've dealt with that on
Yeah.
so many occasions. I have to believe that this is done, final and done.
Okay, we'll make sure that that is,
Just double check on that.
Yeah, double check the
We
road.
also have to approve, yeah, because we didn't talk about the Long Lake and Lawrence Lake management districts. That was another one we said we would talk about.
Long Lake and Lake Lawrence,
Yeah, that was a recommendation
I
by
think-
both districts to increase their rates at their request. You didn't receive any
Yeah, I think-
testimony.
No, we didn't, yeah, but it was another one where we would kind of just set it over and said we would talk about it.
so whenever you're changing rates and fees, those should always be done in conjunction with the budget. So it's not unusual to have you send it over. It is unusual for not having a follow-up conversation. We should have done that. And if you actually adopted the transportation impact fees, that would be a little unusual. And we'll double check to see where that is.
Yeah, because I
You know-
think if they approve it with taking effect January 1st of 2020.
I do have a question at this juncture maybe that would be appropriate to bring up on that issue is we don't keep our list of ordinances and resolutions, and I think the number sequencing is the same for either or somehow. I don't know if that's normal or not. But just the other day, let's say within the last 2 days, I had some come through. And they were back from several months back. I know I just signed, well, everybody did. I think we all signed some that were 3-4 months old. So,
We're working on that.
okay, you're working on
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, so that's good. I know they're, so, yeah, we're working on that.
it. Okay.
Okay, so there's those. Then personnel actions. The first of these items is to set the salaries. And specifically, these are the pay ranges with the 2.5% COLA increase. So you have to adopt those in each of the various pay plans. And the second one is position control, and that is a document that lists every FTE that is created, changed, or abolished. Each FTE action is on position control.
And there's an attachment that you'll see.
Yep. And staff are working right now to create all of these documents and get them through legal. That's what we're currently working on.
I don't recall if there was any issues on any of that, was there?
Was
No,
there any-
all
provided
of
the
the
attachment's
decisions.
accurate. I mean,
That's right, the document needs to accurately reflect your decisions in this
I mean,
budget.
that was, actually, when we talk about late signing, what I'm referring to, just a few days ago, got some of that stuff in it from quite a few days back, or quite a few months back.
Was that the sheriff's decisions?
No, I don't think it was.
what's the concern? I'm not sure, I'm not tracking what you're going.
The resolutions and ordinances fall within the same sequencing, and they don't seem to be timely.
Just getting signed by us.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know about getting presented to us, I'm sure. You know, and then we're having questions later on, did we or didn't we? You know, we,
Presented to you at the time you vote, but
Correct.
it's the signature process and getting them posted online.
That's is that your concern? Because we will not be putting any resolution for you to sign without having the board taking
What?
action.
well, no, I know, but,
They're
I mean,
effective at the time we take
Right.
the vote.
Yes.
so the signature is just a formality.
It's procedural, but it is a good point, that
Important.
we need to bring
I mean, but
those on a
wait.
timely manner.
Waiting, I don't know, 3-4 months, I think it was, if I remember right. That's too long.
Is there a way, I mean, when we're passing these resolutions on here and we're voting on it, I mean, the judges can sign on real time their, kind of like forms. Is there a way that we can, like, while we're on here, just sign, like, electronically the forms?
Well, that will be counter argument to what Commissioner Edwards have argued, that you're gonna be putting a resolution for me to sign on the spot.
Well, when we vote on it, I don't mind signing
So,
once we vote.
I mean, we can explore any type of, because Commissioner Messer is correct, is the action that takes the board what is valid.
Okay.
And one of the AIS software is something that badly needs to be replaced. Amy's done a lot of research on what could support the board better. And we found a product, it's gotten through the ITC subcommittee. We're taking steps we need to update the software before we can do any kind of tech
Yeah.
fix.
Okay, right.
It's a
That's all
mess.
part of that upgrade?
It is, yes. Yeah, it badly needs help. So, position control, it's gonna reflect all the changes in FTEs.
I mean, that's kind of where you guys have to get it right to present, because there's no way we
We
can
work
remember
very
that
closely with HR to make sure that they're all in there.
timeframes.
Yep,
But that
it takes
includes-
time.
That will include the elected officials, correct? Or that's a separate resolution?
The salaries for the elected officials is a separate resolution. And we've almost never taken action on that with the budget because the salary commission runs so late. Yeah, that's often considered after the fact and separately. And in the past, the offices and departments have absorbed.
And that's what, I mean, if given the latitude of the board, since it's tied to a budget, they want to take an action to absorb it by implementing that without changing the budget.
They need the final recommendation from the salary commission though.
Yeah, I'm sure that's coming after Monday, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's, we possibly could have the resolution ready in time to do it with the budget.
Let me work with Ruth to see if that's the case.
Okay. All right. So there's the Appropriation Act. This is your operating budget. It lists budget and FTEs by department. The board authorizes by department and fund. That's the level that the board appropriates operating budget at. And then also any provisos uh,
I don't feel like we had very many provisos this year compared to previous years.
I don't think that there are very many, the standard provisos, and I can bring a list tomorrow of the proposed provisos. There's the one that authorizes the assessor to shift personnel costs to the RETech fund. There's the proviso that allows the auditor to shift any funding that was not spent in elections to the election reserve account to be used in a presidential year. We put in a standard proviso that all changes to positions have to be coordinated and approved by HR to ensure that the position that's created fits the job duties. That's a standard. There's one that we carry over where the sheriff's agreement with the schools, that the schools pay for a certain percentage of those costs for that to be approved by the board. So there's just a short list of standards, and I can't recall, I'll have to go through my notes. I don't think we're adding in maybe one or two. Was get a proviso on this.
Okay.
So, like I said, I can bring that list tomorrow. Then there's the capital budget. And the capital budget approves each project individually and the FTEs that go with that. So that is by department, fund, and project level. And it's for the full amount of the project with specific appropriation in the first 2 years. Then finally, there is the list of funds that are created or abolished. And in this budget, you've abolished the Family Court Services Fund. We're abolishing the Debt Service Fund for Grand Mound because it has been complete. We're creating the Habitat Conservation Plan Mitigation Fund. We're creating an abatement fund, and we're creating the leave buyout fund. So you'll do each of these individually. I'll present the action, you'll take the action.
On the 17th.
Yep, and just work our way down the list on the morning of the 7th. And I'll print this out too.
Okay.
All right.
Back
And
tomorrow to talk about
the fees.
Yep, I'll reach out to Jennifer, make sure they're ready to bring perspective on the water sewer rate increases. And we'll confirm the traffic impact fees, what's already taken out of legislative action, which I believe it did, but confirm that.
All right.
Okay, commissioners, anything else before we adjourn? Okay, thanks everybody. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Good
Almost to
job.
the finish line. And we'll be adjourned.
Thank you.